Yes, I know. Listen, drag queens now, they're DJs. Everybody's a DJ. Maybe Mr. Davis and I should do that. We should be DJs, and I could just play 50s, 60s, and 70s music. Oh, hi. And we're back. I am so excited to be here today and to bring to you somebody who I would describe as interesting, educated, fabulous, charming, funny, and well-versed. I cannot wait to talk about drag history. That's right. Did you know that drag was not discovered in the 1990s with RuPaul and just, coming from a television show? Well, we've got some information for you and who I consider one of my experts. Ladies, gentlemen, and every gender that absolutely exists, the fabulous Brandon Brooks. Hi.
Never call this number again.
Perfect. Oh my gosh. Perfect. Oh my God. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Oh.
Thank you for having me on this lovely show.
Well, I'll tell you what. You inspired me to get back to recording after this crazy situation that happened here locally, which ended up in a positive place.
It did.
Because of some discussion. But it started out where there was backlash about me doing a bingo at an event that would have underage kids.
Yes.
And it got canceled and then it made news. I mean, even there's that news source, Pink News, picked it up and it was all over. And we ended up raising some money for the organization.
You did.
And some things turned positive. And we're going to collaborate on something else. But it took some discussion.
Yes.
It took some time. And I thought to myself, wait a minute. I need to have a coffee with Brandon, who I consider somebody who I love having a conversation with you, but it's one of these things where I need to listen more than share because I feel as though you are one of these people that you have such a wealth of knowledge. And that was the first thing. You're charming. You're lovely. You're fabulous. But I just, when I first met you, it was at the museum. Tell everybody what your position is.
I'm Brandon Brooks, and I work as curator in the John L. Wehle Gallery at Genesee Country Village and Museum. So I work with both sporting art and fashion and textile history. So quite the gamut with those two collections.
Well, and I'm trying to remember, did I meet at your presentation first or did we meet from the tour? Which came first?
I think it was the tour, in the middle of winter. It was quite cold.
Right. And so I had been to the museum with our kiddos and my husband, when they were little.
Oh, yeah.
And then never back. Not in a negative way, just, that sounds terrible, but just something that, we hadn't returned to. And then we came for this tour because we were going to do a drag brunch with your organization.
Yes.
And you gave us a tour. And I was like, this person knows so much about this, the clothing. And there was this vault that you brought us to.
Oh, yes.
And it was like accordion kind of like closet with clothing from the 1800s.
Absolutely. So the room we went into, our vault, houses the Bruce and Susan Green costume collection, which spans the 19th century. It's a comprehensive collection, so it really takes you from underwear to outerwear for men, women, and children. But as we know, fashion doesn't really exist in a vacuum. So we have a little bit of 18th century, a little bit of 20th century. And one of the hardest parts of my job is saying no to things. So people will generously bring their grandma, their great-great-grandmother's clothing or clothing from their family, they found in the attic. They're not quite sure what to do with it. So they'll bring it to us and I get to look at people's things.
Yeah.
And it's always so much fun to see what treasures people have and I will sort of tell them what they have. And if it doesn't meet our collection mission, I will furnish them with places to go and take them. Because as a historian, as a curator, these are physical pieces of history. And we don't want them to go to waste or to end up in the dumpster or being worn by someone at their prom. So we'll direct them, where is a more appropriate place to bring this piece of physical material culture so it stays intact for 200 more years. Because why not?
Why not? And it was just so... We were speechless looking at the beauty and the way that everything is kept so pristine. And then one of the things that just hit me, you showed me, you pulled out a drawer and there were 2 little dresses. Mm-hmm. And you were like, these dresses were for little boys because during potty training, it was easier to change.
Absolutely. 19th century Americans frocked their children, both boys and girls, until a certain age that they would call the breeching.
Right.
Little boys would be, you're essentially gendering the body of a child, taking them out of the frock and putting him into a bifurcated garment like trousers for the rest of his life, really.
Right. It's fascinating. So, okay, then fast forward. So we're preparing to do this drag brunch. We're preparing to talk about how we're going to do this fundraiser for the museum. But then you, again in the dead of winter, you're about to do a presentation. Tell everybody about a little bit about the general first off what the presentation was.
So the presentation was about the history of drag and what they would have referred to as female and sometimes male impersonators in the 19th century. So this was really inspired, this presentation and now this talk we're having here was really inspired by an encounter I had with a guest at the museum who said that gender has no place in history. Now, this was a woman wearing pants. So the irony was lost on her.
Right.
Why are you here in pants and not arrested for a perceived gender discrepancy? And that really inspired me to look a little bit deeper. This is a very charged subject for some people. People have very strong, passionate, definitive opinions about what people should or should not wear according to their gender.
Right.
So that I'm looking at the Bruce and Susan Green costume collection. I'm perhaps a bit spoiled because I can see 200 years how gender has changed. So in 1800, the epitome of masculinity is to wear yards and yards of lace, flounces, colorful embroidery. And by 1850, it's really the opposite. It's known as the Great Male Renunciation. Beauty, decoration, color is now the purview of women, and men adopt this austere sense of elegance in a sea of black and midnight blue wool. And we haven't really broken out of it since. So when we have these very passionate public opinions, really devoid of an awareness of fashion history and gender history, which go hand in hand, glove in glove, one could say, it really inspires one to say, okay, let's use the physical primary resource materials at our disposal and examine this notion that gender is fixed, it's not fluid, and that any sort of gender fluidity, gender identity exploration, or performance of gender variance is some sort of 21st century wokeism.
Right. So many people... we can call it ignorance. We can say that they are not educated. We can use different terms. But the idea is that, I myself, until I began the process of preparing for this, now we'll have our 3rd semester out at SUNY Brockport of our class. It's the drag theory, culture, and performance. Until I began preparing for that, I knew that the statements where people would make drag was something started in the Shakespearean times, or sure, people would dress in drag for theater. And then it seemed to me like, oh, well, you would see glimpses of it throughout history. And I wondered, oh my gosh, I need to do some more research. And it wasn't until really it was the dead of winter, and I want to say it was Black History Month.
It was.
Right.
It was.
And
yes.
It was a presentation of the first drag queen.
Absolutely. In America.
In America. And I was, first of all, I drove through, it was like going through a blizzard.
It was an actual blizzard that afternoon.
And I think there were 3 of us. There were 4 people in the presentation, and you were so good, and you did not shorten the presentation. It was just wonderful. And you brought us through this history, not just of the world, but specifically of this region. And it was a wash of relief over me, because I have been somebody who is very passionate about Drag Story Hour and doing Drag Story Hour now for 8, almost 9 years down at Blackfriars Theater. And thank you. And people would say that drag is not appropriate entertainment for children. There was grooming and all of the stuff that
it's innately sexual.
All of this.
Yeah.
And you just blew that whole theory out of the water with facts. Right?
Facts don't care about feelings. What can I say?
Yes. And so I know that we don't have the time to go through that whole presentation, but give us some highlights. And because we had you in the class, and I've had other drag queens attend to watch, and they're just fascinated because the information is not out there. And I'm so excited to be able to be sharing this today. And I know that we have other events where we'll be sharing this information, but give us some of this knowledge right now. Give us, educate us.
Absolutely. My pleasure. So when I began that journey of research, essentially, I thought I had some misconceptions as well. I thought, the LGBTQ plus community, we have had so many names directed at us and so many names we have reclaimed or given to ourselves. And did they exist in the 19th century? I don't know. Did they talk about this? Was this, as Oscar Wilde put it, the love that dare not speak its name? How can I research something that was purposefully censored or simply not talked about? So I anticipated I would not encounter a lot of information, and boy, was I wrong.
Right.
So one of the first pieces of media I delved into were newspapers. And I went to historic newspapers, NewYorkNewspapers.com, which is completely free. And I just typed in drag queen and nothing came up. So then what I discovered is that they would refer to performers as who would present as a gender they don't identify in private life. Sometimes they did identify that way in private life, as female or male impersonators.
Okay.
And they were wildly popular. And they primarily begin in minstrel shows. So there is a racial component to the story of drag, particularly in American history in the 19th century.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but if we have a listener who's wondering minstrel shows, what would a minstrel show be?
So minstrel shows they begin in the 1830s in New York City. So they are a northern invention.
Right.
And they are essentially variety shows.
Right.
And almost all of the components in these different skits or acts in the variety show employ white men in blackface performing racial and racist stereotypes. And many of the racist caricatures that still exist to this day come from minstrel shows like Uncle Ben or Aunt Jemima or the Mammy or the Jezebel or even Jim Crow. So all those Jim Crow laws are named after a racist caricature started in minstrel shows by a gentleman, if you can call him that, named Thomas Rice or Daddy Rice, as he was known in minstrelsy. Now, minstrel shows were not the only variety act that contained female impersonation. We also have 19th century American burlesque or British pantomime during the holiday season. Essentially variety shows and acts that persist to this day and have evolved into things like SNL or Mad TV, if you remember Mad TV.
Yeah.
And many of these acts would contain an element of female impersonation, whether it is in a Jezebel role or a more matronly role. And those seemed to be the most popular in minstrel shows. And as minstrel shows and the really the racist quality to them started to become distasteful in open, polite society into the 20th century, the female impersonation component remained. So there is this fascination with male to female impersonation that persists and really evolves outside of the minstrel tradition.
Right. And now, I remember during the presentation, one of the things that was so fascinating is that these particular shows were for all ages.
Oh, yes. So minstrel shows, vaudeville shows, burlesque shows, pantomime. It was a mixed crowd. So it is young and old. Black and white audiences are viewing these shows, and they are often marketed, particularly the matronly female impersonation roles are marketed to as matinees for children and their families.
Right, for all ages.
Absolutely.
And some of the locations were they churches or public places where, these weren't nightclubs.
No, these were not nightclubs. Sometimes they could be evening events, but they were often during the day. And they'd be hosted in opera houses, churches, venues, theaters, open air venues. So it was a celebrated form of American entertainment for the young and old, the white and black to enjoy. And this is really, minstrel shows are the first form of American entertainment that is exported around the world. So we have a white man using racist caricatures and stereotypes to bring the image of African Americans to countries that have never encountered someone of color. And in the 19th and early 20th century, this is the first image they're getting, this racist caricature. And it is so impactful that it is very evident to go through advertisements, marketing, promotion of certain products in countries around the world today that happen to include someone of color. And you can see these really nightmarish caricature, racist stereotypes that persist in the marketing to this day.
Now, that some might say, just listening to that, because of the fact that it was so blatantly racist, I mean, there were positives of this performance. Were there good performances for the kids, and was it family friendly from what your research has shown? Was it something that that was, for all ages, or was it? What do we know of the content, I guess?
What I have found, what constitutes family friendly changes from decade to decade, certainly. I would say in minstrel shows, they were quintessentially racist. Okay. They are racist and racial. The female impersonation component in minstrel shows was almost always in blackface, of this sort of promiscuous, over-sexual Jezebel caricature type. And some performers wholeheartedly aligned with minstrel shows. Others branched out. And that doesn't sort of absolve them of their participation and perpetuation of racist and racial stereotypes and caricatures. But some of these performers never dipped their toe in minstrel work at all. They were female impersonators, and that was sort of their standalone act outside of a minstrel show. And those seem to be the performances that were most likely directed and marketed as suitable for families, for children, and would take place during daytime matinees.
Okay. And now, when you're doing this research, you're finding things in the newspaper. Like, give us an example of something that you would see as either the advertisement, or I loved how you described how they didn't say female impersonator or drag queen. I'm not sure exactly what words you used, but the way that they described what they wore. So that right?
So many of when you're looking at newspapers, you can either look at like an advertisement for an upcoming show or a traveling tour, as many of these female impersonators, traveled around the country very financially successfully, might I add. So they're advertising for the show, an upcoming performance, where it's going to take place, what the ticket cost will be, and it's usually describing how they will be really decked out in these beautiful silks and satin gowns. And if you come, you'll be able to enjoy their soprano voice, and they use these adjectives and phrases to describe them as, you'd never know that they were a man. You know, some of our female impersonators even outshine our female performers. So there is an emphasis on appearance, the excellence of their execution. What's interesting is that when white performers, white female impersonators go about this profession, it's very open, it's very public, it's advertised in the local newspaper. It's a public event.
Right.
You can buy tickets to and attend with your family and your kids. When female impersonators of color are performing, it is not usually advertised. It's usually an invite-only event that a select few know about, because police would regularly raid these completely legal, private female impersonator events where they would promenade again in their fine silks and satins. Now, the next day after a police raid, they would list everyone in attendance and everyone who participated, because it was an attempt to shame them.
Right.
These employers, look at who you're employing. You should fire them for being here, or you should evict them from your housing for having participated. And they paint these, again, completely legal private events as houses of ill repute. Right. And we all know what that means. This particularly happens to a gentleman named William Dorsey Swan, who was an African-American. He was enslaved in his youth, and after the Civil War began to host these parties in Washington, D.C. and later New York. And he, and only he, is the first known self-styled drag queen.
Right.
He calls himself a drag queen. The newspapers of these raids call him a drag queen, and they also always remark on his fabulous silk and satin gowns.
I love it. I mean, I love that aspect of it. That
they can't not mention it.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, tell us the information you gave us about the photos.
So, yes. So there are many photos circulating online claiming that who you're looking at is William Dorsey Swan, but that is not William Dorsey Swan. The image that we usually see of a man of color in a white, it's in black and white, so it could be white, it could be cream, it could be light blue, gown, a dress. That is from a cakewalk promenade. Cakewalks are a tradition that started by enslaved African Americans in the South, where they would promenade, essentially mocking their enslavers.
Right.
Now, the enslavers in the house would look with passive, unknowing amusement and think, oh, isn't this interesting and fun to watch, not knowing that they're getting mocked, as they should be.
Right.
And the white enslavers co-opted cakewalks and tried to perform them in minstrel shows in blackface, of course. But the African-American community co-opted cakewalks yet again, reclaimed them, one should say. And those images that are attributed to William Dorsey Swan are actually early 20th century French cakewalk performance images. No known image of William Dorsey Swan exists yet. But there are teams of researchers looking for those images.
Well, and so it's so fascinating is that there are people who, again, I joked about at the beginning of the episode, that RuPaul's Drag Race is the beginning of drag, and we don't want this to exist. And as we know, as you look through entertainment, it's always existed. Now, the years we're talking around here, the earliest known in this country, we're talking about what, 1700s, 1800s?
The earliest known female impersonator, yes. I would say, as a profession, I'd say 1830s. But that is just in recorded history. Okay. So there are absolutely people as performance that I would imagine predate that. Outside of performance, individuals like Public Universal Friend would certainly be someone that we may identify or may self-identify today as non-binary. So someone, a Quaker, who at the beginning of the American Revolution fell ill. They were assigned female at birth and named Jemima Wilkinson. They developed a fever in 1776 and woke up and said, said, Jemima is gone, and in her place, God has put a genderless spirit. And it is my job as the public universal friend to proselytize the good news of Jesus Christ. And so they're using God in the Bible in this non-binary mission statement. And today that kind of would turn today's argument on its head that, somehow gender variance or being non-binary is sort of anti-Christian.
Right.
And I would beg them to look into history to see.
History.
Yeah.
Or to just say that this is a new fad.
Yeah.
Or what is it? When I was growing up, it was only male and female. We have reference here of drag queens, drag kings, gender spectrum.
Yes.
And
race.
But this is all information that you can find in these newspapers, in history books. And what I was, teaching the class with the fabulous Danny Hoskins, I'm an adjunct professor and I'm trying to find this information. And I was trying to, we have this idea of a drag class, and we need to imagine doing a class on all of music. I mean, it's just, as an art form,
it's a macrocosm.
It's really, and so trying to find the right book, and maybe this is our project. Maybe you and I are at some point are going to write. I got to chill. We're going to put together something that gives us more information. And this is one of my favorite books, and it's called The Art of Drag. And what I love, and I was showing this to you earlier, yes, of course it references RuPaul's Drag Race, but it starts where it's saying starting as early as 400 BCE, the 1900s. And then, we have mime, we have Shakespearean theater, we have kabuki theater, we have theater that I can't pronounce. We have, but
neither can I.
But we have one of the things, a dream of mine is pantomime. And as you look on pantomime, you see Peter Pan. And it began where in pantomime in the UK, the holidays, whenever you talk to anybody over in the UK and they're like, what is the problem with a drag story hour happening? We at the holidays do these pantomime shows where, the evil character, the evil stepmother is played by a drag queen. And they think it's just hilarious and funny. And as we go forward throughout the years, we see that drag is a part of entertainment and has always been a part of entertainment.
Yes.
And are there some references that you'd like to point out to our listeners as to some specifics that ring true to you that you're like, oh my gosh, of course it's always existed?
Well, I would say that really across time, across cultures, across nations, drag or sort of wearing the trappings of the supposed opposite sex has been a staple for every culture across time. It is not. It's not really invented or owned by any community, I would say. If we're talking about the 19th century, I can't say without a doubt what the sexual identity of these performers were, but many of them married women and had wives. Some of them were buried next to their male producer. So who knows, they were roommates, as they say.
Yes, I remember in the presentation we were talking about they were roommates or the production manager or...
Yeah, and there's a lot of nuance to this. As I researched some of these people, I thought, wow, this person lived this part of their life in the closet. They were never able to come out the way and live their life openly. They also played in blackface. So there are conflicting feelings, and there's a lot of nuance and a lot of intersectionality in the research of gender impersonation, particularly American 19th century, because there's such a heavy racial and racist component to some of it. That's certainly not to say that American drag has roots in racism and that's all. It's just in 19th century, that seemed to be a very easy marketing ploy for the 19th century American palate. But we were saying before, Peter Pan, always played by a young woman. Right. And there are certain things where I think, oh, of course, drag is everywhere. It's not it's not sort of some illicit after hours sexual activity or sensual performance. It can be,
of course,
in the right time and place with the appropriate audience. But when we see people accusing Drag Story Hour of being sexual, or you're stripping or something, I think you don't know how many layers goes into drag. No one is stripping.
Right.
These children are coming with their parents, and you're reading Goodnight Moon to them. Like,
Exactly.
Give me a break.
Give me a break. And ultimately, that is the idea. One of the ideas I want is to get from this conversation, and to, we're just doing a broad stroke across, but the idea that it has always existed, that our trans family has always existed, that our non-binary family has always existed. The fact is that drag has always, and it's an art form. And of course, there's certain, if you think of music or theater, that it's not appropriate for the morning on a Saturday morning for Drag Story Hour.
Yeah.
Just the same with drag. So yes, while you'll pull something, let's just say from an evening nightclub performance, and say, this is what they're showing to children, of course not.
No.
And what it comes down to, I have two stories I want to tell. One was, we had this big uproar in one of our suburbs here in Rochester, because there was a group doing a Drag Story Hour, and the community was upset, and the lawmakers did everything they could to drive it out of this library. And we had a person of color, trans person, reading books, and I believe a drag king. And I was doing one as an older, let's just face the facts, I'm an old lady, but an old white lady reading like Mrs. Doubtfire down in Blackfriars Theater, and we had no issues. And so I question, is this a problem with drag, or is it racism and homophobia? And unfortunately, in that particular case, I would say that they were driving me out of this suburb for that reason. They moved it to another place, and I like to give these positive solutions. They moved it to another place, another private bookstore, and it went well. And they create, instead of a protest, they created a line of positivity for the children to walk in. This made me so happy. But when I think also of, we talked briefly at coffee about Mrs. Doubtfire. I mean, this story is celebrated. This particular person, this dad, gets a divorce and wants to see their kids, so gets in drag and becomes the babysitter. But then by the end is doing Drag Story Hour on television. Like,
he's given a TV show.
And there was a standing ovation at the live show. And I saw that and I got sad. And I thought to myself, you're giving a standing ovation for something that I do, but the only reason why you're standing is because he's straight. If he had happened to get that divorce and he was gay,
would you have had the same reception?
Would the show even be playing at the at the theater?
And you're absolutely right. When homophobia plays into it,
right?
I think that pathologizes. Well, first of all, homosexuality is often pathologized to begin with, and when you add that to any sort of visual and perceivable gender variance, that adds an element of, is this indicative of something? And if my child sees this, are they going to end up like you when they grow up?
Right.
And yeah, if Robin Williams' character was gay in that movie, like his brother, if he went to that door and he said, I'm gay, and he said, I'm so happy, would they have even given him the show?
Right.
I don't, when did that come out? 90, 91?
Right.
I don't think so. They would have said, this is you're getting your thrills off with this in some weird way. I don't want any part of this. But because he's straight, and that can reassure the audience, he's doing this because he wants to be with his kids. That's why, he's not gay. He's not actually feminine. Don't worry about it. That sanitizes it for an audience.
Now, who are I know you mentioned a few in the presentation, who are some celebrities from the time? We can show some photos that you can think of that were, performers, drag queens, drag kings, drag artists of the time.
Of the 19th
Of the
century.
19th century.
So one of the biggest names is a gentleman named Neil Burgess. And Neil Burgess travels the country. He comes to Rochester in the Genesee Valley quite often. And he has this amazingly popular show and a shtick. And there's sort of two archetypes of female impersonation that seem to be particularly popular and successful. They're making money in the 19th century. And one is the prima donna, who is young. We would call her like a fish queen. She's serving realness.
Right.
You wouldn't know. She has the most beautiful gowns, the most beautiful hair, the most operatic voice, and these arias that she presents. Then there's the matron archetype, and she is an older woman, usually a little cantankerous, a termagant type of woman who has a henpecked husband. And
wait a minute. Is it me?
Are you a time traveler?
Well, maybe.
And Neil Burgess made a huge career playing the latter of the two, the matron. So there were roles like in the country fair that he, a very famous play he was in as an older sort of lecturing woman. And his career lasted into the early 20th century when he passed away.
Right.
Other big names that also latch on to the matron and the prima donna archetype would be someone like Stanley Burton. Stanley Burton begins his career as a prima donna. And you see, there are carte de visite and daguerreau, well, not daguerreotype, I'd say probably like ambrotype, carte de visite, cabinet cards of all of these individuals in full drag.
Right.
And they look great.
Yes. So a cabinet card, is this sort of like an ad, right?
Cabinet card is, you can think of it as a photograph on a card stock.
Oh, right. Okay.
And it's large enough that you'd put it like in a curio or a display of some piece of furniture in your house. And then there could be the smaller version, which we would call like a calling card these days, a carte de visite, a visiting card.
Okay.
And these would be printed by the 100 and you'd hand them out.
Pass them out. Oh my gosh.
And at Genesee Country Village and Museum, we are adding and expanding our collection to tell these stories, a broader version of American history. We know at Genesee Country Village and Museum that telling more stories does not subtract from the other stories we're telling. It is all additive. It's telling a broader and more accurate version of American history and the history of the Genesee Valley.
And by you sharing just that last piece, there could be somebody out there who has maybe a family or maybe they're seeing things politically, however, where they feel less than, they feel alone. They don't feel as though, one of the phrases I've learned in my recovery journey is terminally unique. Like I'm the only one who's ever experienced this. But to hear that this has existed is such just a comfort. And
it's a lifeline.
It's a
for
lifeline.
Some people.
It really is. So thank you for telling these stories. Thank you for sharing. We just glossed through so much of it, but I think it's impactful the things that we've talked about. I'm so thrilled to see Jinx Monsoon on Broadway.
Oh, absolutely.
Show after show.
Yes.
And just showing, we have people succeeding in so many different ways in the entertainment world. And this, to me, when I do Drag Story Hour and I see those kiddos just light up, having a good time, but more importantly, I see the parents saying, thank you for showing me my child as a community. Mm-hmm. That's the work that you're doing. That's the work that I hope to do. And I think this conversation is one of many that we can have, and we can go further. But I think today, we've done a great job of showing some of this history, showing how it's impacted the world and how it's impacted this region in the Rochester area. And hopefully somebody will listen. Hopefully somebody will consider the fact that this is something that people have every right to express themselves,
Absolutely.
Be themselves, and it's not something new.
Mm-hmm. It's not something new. And what I particularly enjoy with the expansion of Drag Race all over the world, we see Drag Race France,
right,
España, RuPaul and the RuPaul's Drag Race empire has undone a lot of the work that Daddy Rice did, a white man exporting racist imagery around the world in female impersonation. And now it is a man of color exporting a message of love. There's a reason he always says, everybody say love.
Yeah.
And that is the message he is spreading around the world and really decimating the legacy of Daddy Rice.
Yeah.
So good riddance.
Good riddance. Well, okay. Now we're transitioning to my favorite part, dad jokes. So I'll go first. I just pulled these randomly. I tried to buy a lighter on eBay. All they had was 11,435 matches. Get it? Matches. For
Oh, yes, I do.
You're like, okay.
Oh,
okay,
Dad,
go ahead.
thank you.
Thank you, Dad.
Do I
Your
say
turn.
one?
Yes.
What did the banana say to the monkey?
What?
Nothing. Bananas can't talk.
That's so you.
It is. It is. Yes.
Okay. One more. Okay. So where do rabbits go after they get married? On a bunny moon.
Oh, I like that one. That one's cute.
Okay.
What's worse than raining cats and dogs?
What?
Hailing taxi cabs. That would be worse.
That would be worse, especially now.
Yeah.
We have Uber.
Yeah, exactly.
Or what's the other one? Uber and I don't know.
Lyft.
Lyft. That Lyft.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. More to come. I cannot wait to continue to collaborate. And I want to just thank you for joining us today. And thank you for listening and sharing. And I am just so lucky to be here at Rock Vox. Fitz is the best. And thank you for sharing. And I want you to all remember, there's always time for kindness.